Hey y'all, welcome to The Real Value, where we recap, review, rate, and evaluate all things real, all things watched. Today we're going to focus on the 2018 supernatural thriller, The Nun. The Nun is a 2018 American Gothic supernatural horror film directed by Corin Hardy of 2015's The Hollow and written by Gary Doberman, who is best known for his entries in the Conjuring universe, including the film he made his directorial debut in, 2019's Annabelle Comes Home. The Nun is a spin-off and the fifth installment in the Conjuring universe. The film stars, and I'm gonna butcher this, Taissa Farmiga, who, unbeknownst to me, is the actual little sister of Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine Warren in the Conjuring universe. It's funny because while watching The Nun, I kept saying to myself, man, casting did a great job picking Taissa as a relative of Lorraine Warren because they look so much alike. Well, unbeknownst to me, they're literally sisters. Oh, the things we learn. But you might be mostly familiar with her from her appearances in the American Horror Story anthology series. It also stars Damien Bircher and Jonas Bloquet, with Bonnie Aarons reprising her role as the Demon Nun, an incarnation of Valak, who we first met in The Conjuring 2. Bonnie Aarons has actually been acting in films since 1994 with her role in Exit to Eden, along with roles in The Princess Diaries, Shallow Hal, Risk Cutters, Drag Me to Hell, The Fighter, and many more. But more than anything, she's now most famous for her portrayal as the Demon Nun in the Conjuring universe. The plot of The Nun follows a Roman Catholic priest with a haunted past, and a nun in her novitiate who also happens to have the gift of foresight as they uncover an unholy secret in 1952 Romania. The Nun was released in the US on September 7th, 2018, and grossed an astounding $366 million off a $22 million budget. So yes, a sequel was commissioned right after that. But we'll get to that in another episode. Despite the box office success of the film, the reviews weren't as up to par. On Rotten Tomatoes, their tomato meter rates at a 24%, while their popcorn meter has it at a 35%. On Letterboxd, it sits at a 2.2 out of 5, while on IMDb, it holds at a 5.4 out of 10. Personally, I feel these are a little harsh, but I only saw the movie recently, whereas when this came out in 2018, the populace might have been comparing it to The Conjuring's main movie timeline, which, yes, comparatively to those, I'd say it falls flat, but otherwise, I kind of dug it, but we'll get to the real value of the flick later on. So now, we're gonna get into our real telling of 2018's The Nun. Needless to say, spoilers start now. All right, if things look a little different, it's because I haven't been feeling well and had to stop and reset up and re-record, but here we go. The real telling of The Nun. So the movie kicks off in 1952 Romania at the eerie Abbey of St. Carta. We see two nuns are running from a dark, unseen force. One is violently dragged away, bloodied and lost to the shadows, though not before passing a mysterious key to her fellow sister. The surviving nun takes the key and flees, but with no escape in sight, she takes her own life to prevent the evil force from possessing her. The following morning, her body is discovered hanging by a delivery man named Frenchie, who regularly visits the convent to deliver supplies and such. So because she hung herself, it's suspected that it was a suicide. News of this apparent suicide reaches the Vatican, prompting them to send Father Burke, a priest with a tormented past, and Sister Irene, a young nun still in training, to investigate whether the abbey remains sacred ground or not. Suicide is a grave offense in the church's eyes, and they want some answers. They find out that Frenchie knows the area well, so they ask him to guide them to the abbey. When they arrive and see the nun's body, Frenchie points out that something strange has occurred. She's sitting upright now, not the way he left her. So that's strike one for me. Okay, right, whether we're gonna stay or not in the abbey. Father Burke inspects the body nonetheless and retrieves the same mysterious key that had been passed between the sisters, pries it from her dead hand. While walking around the abbey, they meet the head abbess, who tells them they must return the next day because the convent is cloistered for the evening. Now, Frenchie is gonna leave while the father and sister stay there for the evening, and he's like, I'll return and get y'all tomorrow. On his way back, he stumbles upon a terrifying sight, a ghostly nun in the graveyard, who suddenly transforms into a hideous creature and lunges at him. He narrowly escapes, however, and ends up going to the local tavern to, drink that away. While at the bar, the bartender calls out Frenchie for leaving the priest and the nun behind, basically like, bro, you left them up there? You know some weird shit has been happening. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And Frenchie starts second guessing his choice to leave them there alone. Meanwhile, Father Burke is tormented by visions of a boy he once failed to save during an exorcism. The demon now haunting the abbey uses this memory against him, luring Burke into a coffin, and then by supernatural forces, Burke is suddenly buried alive. Luckily, Sister Irene, who possesses a divine gift of foresight, senses where Burke is and digs him out. Inside the grave, they find relics and ancient texts that offer clues to the demonic presence they're facing. The next morning, only Sister Irene is permitted full entry into the abbey. She learns that the nuns maintain a continuous prayer cycle to hold back the demonic force. There, Irene meets Sister Victoria, who suspiciously resembles the nun that hanged herself at the beginning of the movie. Like, identically? Elsewhere, Father Burke studies the text from the grave and uncovers the demon's identity, Valak, the unholy force plaguing the abbey. While Sister Irene talks to Sister Victoria, we're shown a flashback to the abbey's origins. It was built during the Dark Ages by a duke obsessed with the occult. He tried summoning Valak for the same old cliche reasons of power and wealth. But as soon as he was able to do so, Crusader knights stormed in and they sealed the portal using the blood of Christ pulled from the Holy Grail. Yeah, they just had that, like, in their back pocket and such. However, the portal was reopened during the bombings of World War II, unleashing Valak once more, which I found strange that in the Dark Ages, it took the occult and magic and things like that to raise Valak, but World War II, it just took some bombs reopening the seal, and Valak broke free. Anyways, we cut to Father Burke talking to the abbess again, only to realize that she's actually been dead all along, and he's probably been speaking to Valak in disguise because she's like, Irene is lost and has no hope. And he's like, Back inside, Sister Irene witnessed Sister Victoria praying, but soon discovers she too has been dead the whole time. And suddenly we get a bunch of spectral nuns appearing, forming a prayer circle around Irene to shield her from the entity and trying to keep the entity at bay. But one by one, they're knocked back by the demon. Father Burke and Frenchie arrive just in time, but as chaos unfolds, this is when Irene realizes fully that all the nuns were actually spirits. They've all been dead the entire time, and they see Victoria's decaying body, and that only kind of confirms it. So they're now all aware that the demonic presence must be confronted directly, so Irene asks Father Burke to administer her final vows so she can officially become a nun and have the power of Christ inside her. Afterward, we see a beam of light striking a statue of the Virgin Mary that's pointing toward the hidden chamber containing the Holy Grail. Well, that's convenient. How do they get into the chamber? They use that mysterious key from earlier and unlock the chamber and retrieve the Holy Grail filled with Christ's blood. Father Burke then places the vessel around Irene's neck, saying, only a true bride of Christ can wield such a thing. So, that's good. She took her vows just a second ago. So here they about to begin their final confrontation with the entity, and they split up because that always goes well in horror films. Burke is attacked by false visions of demon nuns and again haunted by the boy from his past. Frenchie frantically searches for Irene and finds that she ultimately gets possessed by Valak, and she attacks him, but he's able to get some blood from the vessel, from the Holy Grail, and he smears it on her face, which immediately forces the demon Valak out of her body. Valak retaliates by lifting Frenchie by the throat and hurling him to the ground. The demon then turns back to Irene and attempts to drown her in this pool of water that all of a sudden is there? I don't know where it came from, but it's there. But Irene had a secret move. She's able to get some of the blood of Christ into her mouth, and just as Valak lifts her into the air, thinking it's over, thinking that Valak has won, Irene spits the blood directly into its face. The demon then begins to disintegrate and collapses back into the abyss it once emerged from. And then Father Burke all of a sudden is there again. Yeah, he survived. Together, the three survivors bury the nuns, reconsecrate the grounds, and leave the abbey behind. But unbeknownst to them, Valak managed to plant a fragment of itself inside Frenchie, before being banished. When it lifted him into the air, it delivered a little bit of his essence into Frenchie. This is where the film jumps 20 years into the future, and we're shown a classroom in Wakefield, Massachusetts, where Ed and Lorraine Warren are giving a lecture about an exorcism they performed on a man named Maurice, Frenchie's real name. Among the crowd, we see a familiar face. It's the mom from the Conjuring film, the first Conjuring film, and this is seamlessly tying this movie into the start of that film. And we get the end of The Nun. But that's not the end of The Nun's story. So in a nutshell, that's 2018's The Nun. Now, there are some things in the movie that I find a little odd, like why would Valak bury the priest in the same coffin with all the relics and books containing knowledge about itself for them to use against it? Probably not the smartest thing to do, Valak. Why has it taken several years since the bombings in World War II for Valak to really make its presence known? She learns that the nuns maintain a continuous prayer cycle to hold back the demonic force. Like, maybe it had to work up enough power and such, but it doesn't really say that. The bombings World War II at latest were 1945, whereas the movie takes place in 1952. So it takes about 7 years before Valak's force is truly known, I guess. Why did the Vatican choose Sister Irene in the first place? A nun in her novitiate, a nun in training, instead of like someone else that was already, like, why didn't they get, for instance, Lorraine Warren instead of who is probably in the movie, in the series, her cousin? It doesn't ever really mention that. Why did they split up in the last scene? Because, that's not the smartest thing to do. And was Father Burke really necessary at all, other than to administer the final vows for Sister Irene to take? He doesn't really do anything. It's all Sister Irene. Frenchie helps a little bit, but really it's Sister Irene who does it all. Frenchie, I guess, saves her from being possessed, but Father Burke doesn't do much. Even at the end, he doesn't give the final prayer over the nuns in the graveyard. It's Sister Irene doing that. Anyways, overall, I enjoyed The Nun, and I give it a rating of a real mid. Now, for those uninitiated, my ranking scale is on a 7-point system. It goes from real regrets, real roughs, to real mids or mehs. Now, this third point, the real mid meh, it's kind of broken into two halves, the meh being kind of like the worst part of average and the mid being the better part of average. Basically, this allows me to say that I enjoyed a movie without fully committing to it and saying that it's good, that it's real good. Because after this point, the 4 remaining points in my scales are all positive: real good, real great, real rarities, and real MVPs. Ultimately, it's my way of being like, oh yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's not the best movie overall. It's not spectacular. If it were on TV, maybe I'd watch it again, maybe I wouldn't. But overall, I had an okay time with it. Anyways, this one is rated on the positive side of my real mid ranking. Nothing spectacular. It had some pretty good jump scares. There's a feeling of dreadful atmosphere. You like Frenchie immediately. You can relate with the characters somewhat. I think if it wasn't attached to the Conjuring universe, I would like it less. But because it is, I like it a tad more, simply because it gives us more information surrounding the franchise. Because ultimately, the Conjuring universe is pretty awesome in my view. I give it 2 Scaredy Cows for the atmosphere, the way the nun looks. Bonnie Aaron's design is pretty cool. Past that, it's not really scary, but y'all know me. It takes a lot to get under my skin. Okay, that's it for me, folks. Thanks for stopping by. Remember to be nice to each other, and if you can't do that, at least don't be a dick. Peace. Wait a minute, like, share, and subscribe. Also, would y'all like me to do the other, I think, 7 films in the Conjuring universe to get us ready for the final Conjuring movie that's set to release in September? I decided to do The Nun because that one is coming out, but there's several other movies I could do. So let me know in the comments below if you like this. If you want me to do more reviews like the Reel-Tellings, then please let me know and I will abide. All right, like, share, and subscribe. Peace.